Morgan here. I'm joined by Struggle Jennings, and I'm really excited because Struggle and I met, 3 or so years ago. We played in the Folds of Honor celebrity softball game. So, Struggle, thanks for joining me. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I got to carry that trophy home that day.
You did.
I was supposed to give it to Jelly, and he never picked it up, so it is on my mantle.
I love that. You're like, by the way, it's just mine now.
Yeah.
You know, my first introduction to you was you pulled out a whole bunch of snacks out of a backpack, and I was like, I like this guy.
Yeah.
This is the dude.
I knew it was going to be hot, and I was going to have a lot of friends. You know, you just bring snacks for friends.
You knew how to make friends. Like, you knew the momentum there.
So, you know, I grew up in a household where my mom, we moved like every 9 months or something, 6 to 9 months or every year. My mom was 16 when she had me. So she was one of those kind of like, I need a fresh start. And we'd move to the other side of town, or we'd move here, or we'd move there, you know. And so, yeah, I learned how to make friends when you're the new guy.
Very
Just bring
much
snacks.
So. And talk to me about your life and your childhood, which also one of my questions is Struggle your real name, or is this just a stage name?
It's a stage name.
Okay. And so, why? What is Struggle? Like, where did that come from?
So I was actually with a friend of mine, and I started rapping. I just came home from a jail sentence, and I was a single dad with my 2 kids, and really trying to get my rap career off the ground. And of course, I had a name in the streets.
Okay.
But I was like, I don't know if this name is really digestible. I don't know if a parent's gonna let her kid buy a CD from Lil Killer.
That was your name in the streets, Lil Killer?
Yeah, when I was a teenager.
Do you get that name, or does somebody give you that name?
Somebody gives it to you. Yeah.
Okay.
And the same way with Struggle is, you know, a friend of mine, we were about to go do our first studio session, and we had been like practicing, you know, and writing the songs, and me and him were doing like an EP together, and a guy named White Boy, and he was like, what are you gonna go by? I was like, man, I don't know. I guess it'll come to me. And he was like, man, you ought to go by Struggle. And I was like, Struggle? And he was like, yeah, bro. Like, I ain't seen nobody go through the stuff you go through on a daily basis. He was like, you need to go by Struggle. And I was like, all right, cool. So I started going by. At first, it was like Young Struggle, you know.
Yeah.
And as I got older, it became Struggle. And then my grandfather being Waylon, when I caught my case, they automatically started calling me Struggle Jennings. They're like, the grandson of Waylon Jennings, rapper Struggle Jennings. And I was fighting it at first. I was like, man, and I was telling my guy that was kind of handling my socials, and that was before Instagram or anything like that. My Twitter is still Young Strug, at Young Strug. So he was like, nah, man. He was like, dude, if you Google Struggle, it's going to pop up like kids in Africa and, you know, all wars, all kinds of struggles that are like going on. He was like, Struggle Jennings, it'll be Googleable. And I was like, man, I don't know. And so I called my Uncle Shooter, and he was like, nah, Waylon would love that. He was like, take that name and make it your own. And so I rolled with it. By the time I came home, there was really no reversing it, you know.
It had already been done. Like, you already became Struggle Jennings.
So.
Okay, and you just mentioned, and there's so many different avenues I want to go with you, but your mom, and talk to me about childhood, because you talked about your friends saying you went through a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
What were some of those moments in your life that led to where you are now?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, starting early, my mom was 16 when she had me, and she's the daughter of Jesse Coulter and Dwayne Eddy, who's a legendary guitar player, rock and roll. And Jesse and Waylon had ran off together when my mom was like 4 and moved from California to Nashville. And Waylon adopted her, and, you know, so forth. And then she had me at 16. She met my dad. My dad was in old West Nashville, came from poverty, just roughneck, good old boy. And they met at the West Nashville skating rink. And one starry night in the back of his El Camino, I was made.
You love to tell that story, don't you?
Yeah,
I can tell.
Yeah, I love it. I'm about as West Nashville as they get. So they lasted till I was about 4. My grandpa bought them a house in Franklin, in a neighborhood called Maplewood. There was only like 4 or 5 houses when he bought the house, and it was like just single story, cute little house in Franklin. And then the neighborhood built up. By the time I was 6, there was probably 250 houses in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty enclosed neighborhood, like one way in, one way out. So as a child, I had a pretty normal upbringing, like pretty clean cut. You know, my mom was 16. We were raising each other. You know, the firefighters were at our house every day because she was burning something, trying to learn how to cook, you know, and her and my dad, they split up when I was 4. So she was kind of doing it on her own, but she was still singing backup for Waylon. Okay. So she was gone a lot on tour. And then in the summer times, I'd get to go on the bus or, you know, and I was at Waylon's house a lot because me and Shooter are just a year apart.
Which Shooter is your uncle, though?
Yeah, that's Waylon and Jesse's only kid together.
Okay.
And so then when I went through some stuff, like when I was like 8, my mom got in a real abusive relationship. She got married to another guy, and I watched him beat the shit out of her. And then of course my dad came over there and, you know, like ran him off. But then when I was 10, my dad was murdered.
I remember when we were talking kind of before this, you had mentioned that. And were you living with your dad at the time?
No, I was living with my mom.
Okay.
And so when that happened, I was outside playing football. And my mom called me and was like, hey, your dad's on the phone. He wants to talk to you. And I was like, I'll tell him I'll call him back later. And then when I came in that night, she was crying in the back room. All of a sudden, Waylon and all my family pulled up and sat me down and said, your dad's no longer with us. Well, they told me it was suicide. So throughout my childhood, I was like living with that regret. Like, what if I would have answered the phone? Would he still be here? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I was 18 that I found out he was murdered.
Were they telling you that to protect you, I assume?
Well, so my dad's side of the family knew what really happened, but they were protecting the family. And so my mom genuinely didn't. She thought that he had committed suicide. Wow. And it wasn't until I was 18 that I was like suicidal. And you know, I'd been living with my uncle because I started getting in a lot of trouble. 12, I joined a gang, started selling drugs. My mom, her and Waylon had kind of fell out because, you know, she was like starting to date again. And he was like, hey, you know, your son just lost his dad. You just got out of a terrible marriage. I think you should chill a little bit. And, you know, she's 20-something-year-old young lady, you know, looking for love and on her own and alone.
And she's gone through a lot of stuff at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And so she was kind of had that mentality, you know what, I don't want your money. I don't need your help. I'm going to do it on my own, and I'm going to show you that I can do it on my own. So it was kind of like a culture shock. At the same time I lost my dad, we moved to the other side of town. And she got 2 jobs and was going to cosmetology school and, like, you know, working her ass off trying to raise me and not, you know, kind of cut the cord from the family, which I still was at his house a lot because I was over there hanging out with Shooter and, you know, all the holidays and stuff. But financially, she wouldn't take anything from him, and she was trying to prove. So we went through from what seemed like a pretty normal childhood. I mean, I'd be at West Nashville on the weekends a lot to see my dad or my uncle or my cousins and stuff. So I always kind of straddled those tracks where when I was in West Nashville, you know, I learned a lot of those irrational beliefs and, like, you know, just the things that kind of sparked that mentality, that outlaw mentality. But then I'd go to Waylon's house and see, you know, the Jag and the Cadillac and the maid and the nanny and the guards, and
these very 2 polarized lives.
Yeah. And knowing Waylon came from nothing gave me that, like, sense of anything's possible. But then when I'd leave his house and go back to my neighborhood, the only people that had the Cadillacs and the Jaguars were the drug dealers. So I always gravitated towards that because I saw a quality of life that I knew was obtainable. I allowed my circumstance to kind of keep me, this is all I have, you know, this is all I can do, this is all I can get. And that kind of led me into, you know, being a drug dealer most of my life and in a life of crime.
That's really tough too. Do you look back at that time in your life? Are you not necessarily happy that it happened, but do you feel like it made you who you are today to be the person that you are?
Oh, 1,000%. Like I have no regrets in life. I mean, there's some things I wish I may not have said, or a couple of things I wish I hadn't done in my life. But as far as like looking back or having any kind of like victim mentality, it's like, nah, like I went through everything that I went through. It brought me exactly where I'm at, made me who I am, and gave me the testimony to be able to reach other people. It gave me the insight. And, through the different phases, it kept leveling me up to the place that I'm at now as a man,
Well, and I want to ask you because I grew up in rural Kansas. There's not a lot happening over there. We got a lot of farmers and country land. That's about
where
it.
most people get in trouble is when it's kind of boring is when you find shit to do.
I did drink very early. Yeah. That's very true. But, there wasn't a lot of activity. I wasn't around a whole bunch. So when you get into drug dealing and stuff, I have to imagine as a kid that was terrifying, and you were doing and experiencing things that as a kid you never should have had to.
For sure. I think that we were so caught up in the lyrics of Tupac and No Limit and, Master P, and we just accepted that as life, and that's what it was, and that's what we gravitated towards. And like, I don't ever really remember any time in my life really being like poor me, or I think because a lot of times because I had seen the two sides so much. And I knew that Waylon grew up with nothing. They were dirt poor in Texas, dirt floors. And he made it out of there on a dream. And my dream was just shifted a lot of times. Even though I always had music in my heart and I wanted to do music, there was a time where I wanted to be Tony Montana. There was a time where I wanted to be Tony Soprano. I wanted to be John Gotti.
You really went through different periods.
I did. And
eras
luckily,
of struggle.
Yeah. For sure. No, there's you can go back and look at pictures. There's times where I had braids to my ass and right where my pants were, and gold chain, and there's times where I was in a 3-piece suit thinking I was about to start a mafia family,
Do you feel like that was because you were going back and forth? Like you would go and hang out with your grandfather in this kind of fame-filled and very successful life, and you're seeing these things and you want to be this one person, and then you'd go back and you'd be with your mom and you'd see this other side, and you're like, well, I kind of want both.
Yeah. I mean, I still struggle with that, right? Even, there's times where my career starts lifting to a certain place and things get crazy, and I'm like, man, I really just want to be home with the kids. Do I really want to be a huge country star or rapper or entertainer, or do I want to be a PTA dad and coach my son's football? There's still always that internal battle. The music just won't let me go anywhere else. That I'm so embedded with just a love for music is my life, to a point. My children are my life and my family, of course, but I just have that gravitational pull, that I've never been able to run from it, even when I've tried. It's kind of like God, as many a times I tried to run completely in the opposite direction, and something would happen that would be life altering, and a bullet would miss me by inches, or, whatever the case was, that it could have been really a lot worse than it was, and always reeled me back in, to like, no, I know this is what is true, and this is true to me.
Are you telling me that you've been shot before?
Oh, yeah. I've been shot twice. I actually got shot. You know where Big Bad Breakfast is?
Yeah.
Okay, so that used to be Wendell Smith's. It was a corner store.
Okay, and Wendell Smith is still there.
The restaurant.
Oh.
And the liquor store.
Okay.
So Big Bad Breakfast was the convenience store. So old man Wendell had the convenience store, the liquor store, and the restaurant.
Okay.
My whole family worked in the restaurant. My aunt was a waitress there. I think my dad bussed tables there when he was young. My grandma worked there. But then a guy named Jakey Cook married Wendell Smith's daughter, Beverly Smith. And so my whole life, Jakey Cook was running that. And he was like a old school gambler, like Southern mafia type guy. His son Benji still runs, and then the grandson also runs the restaurant.
Okay.
But Jakey was just like cool, old, multi-millionaire that you wouldn't even you wouldn't even know it.
He was under the radar.
Yeah, he's just cool, chill old guy. But and they got a lot of them got their start with like poker machines in the back of the gas station. Yeah.
Wait, and so you got shot where that place is now?
Yeah, I got into a shootout there when I was young.
How old were you?
I got hit in the shin. It actually ricocheted underneath the car, I believe, and hit me in the shin.
What does it feel like to get shot?
You don't realize you get shot at first. Like, you don't feel it. I mean, you feel the pressure of the tug, but when you're in the moment with adrenaline, you don't feel it like that.
And this was that like when you were kind of wrapped up in things back then?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, from the time I was 12, I always went through phases because I always knew better. You know, I'd been planted those seeds by my mom and my grandma, you know, heavy in church. And I had always been had seeds planted of right and wrong. But I just tugged away from it, you know, so much. And so I went through phases like 12 to 15. I was just wild. Went to move in with my uncle, was doing good for a little while. Was like, yeah, I'm changing my life. Got caught back up. Went to jail when I was 21 on a weed case. Did 15 months, got out. Walked straight for like 5 years, raising my kids. And then I always diverted back to it when things got tough. You know, it's kind of like a comfort zone for me. Like, I knew I was good at being bad.
Yeah. You knew there was money in it. You knew there was a way to help you survive.
Yeah. Temporary money.
Yeah.
Like, even at the height of my career in that world, even if I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, when you're living that life, you don't really get to enjoy it or spend it. It gets spent for you. Like, you're making your friends bonds, or you're paying for this funeral, or somebody robbed somebody and you gotta, you know, it was yours and you gotta, you know, so it's like there's always, or you get busted and they take everything, you know, and you start over. So
it was like money that kind of felt like not yours. You just didn't actually do anything with.
Yeah, it's an illusion. Yeah. And that's why I try to tell a lot of these young guys now when I go into these prisons and talk and stuff, is like, it all looks good, but my uncles told me when I was young, and they were caught up in a lot of the same things too, you know, but they told me when I was young, they're like, man, there's really you never really retire from this. You know, you either end up dead or in prison. So.
And so was at 21 your last one?
No, I just got home 9 years ago. I did 5 years from 31 to 36. I did 5 years federal prison and state prison.
Wow.
Came home in 2016, was in a federal halfway house for 6 months. Got out, me and Jelly started touring. Jelly was just starting to, you know, get on his feet. He had been putting in a lot of work, but he was starting to catch a little bit of steam. And that was still 5 years before, you know. And we did a few albums, did 4 albums called Waylon and Willie. And just
obviously, you know, inspired from your grandfather.
And their friendship and the two dualities of the two guys. And
did you feel like you and Jelly were kind of Waylon and Willie?
We still are. We still are to this day, 100%.
Is that same
the more
kind of vibe?
Stories I hear even now, I'm like, God, this is crazy.
Yeah, like the outlaw side and just the things you guys have experienced, or more personality side?
Both. All the above. Really, like, it's.
Wait, so who's Waylon and who's
I'm
Willie?
Waylon. I'm hard-headed. I still wear a hat that says CMA, country my ass. And, you know.
And what makes Jelly Willie?
Well, the lightheartedness. He smokes a lot of weed.
Okay, I'm following. I got you.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, and you know, he's been incredibly successful, and he moves really good in that world. You know, and he's done so much. I'm proud of him.
And you get out 9 years ago, and what has been this stint that's kept you on this path to hopefully never go back?
Let's talk about it, Morgan.
Yeah.
So,
tell me.
No,
give me it.
When I went to prison, the mother of my kids fell really hard. My wife at the time. She got addicted to drugs, ran off with one of my best friends at the time. He ended up getting locked up. She got in a relationship after relationship with, people that were using drugs and doing drugs, and she just went down a really dark path, ended up losing custody of my kids. Before she lost custody, it got super dark. There was a time, my daughter Innocence, she was 4 when I went to prison. By the time she was like 5, 6, I'm calling from prison. Her brothers and sisters haven't ate all day. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Her mom's passed out on drugs. I had to teach her how to make macaroni and cheese from a jail phone so she could feed her siblings. And it was just thing after thing like that, where it just struck that chord that I was like, this cannot be how the story's told. This can't be what I leave my kids. I know where they're headed with the environment they're in and what they're going through right now. And it's not a pretty future, My daughter was molested in a drug house. They ended up in foster care. Their mother passed away from a drug overdose. That little girl just graduated with a 3.9 GPA honors.
Oh, yeah. We love that.
It.
That's amazing.
I love telling that when I say it on stage, like that's probably the loudest the crowd gets for me all night, but that's okay.
You're like, that's okay. I'll take that.
Yeah. But, and all my kids are just thriving and doing so good. But, I really, when I was in there, I had to really take full accountability for all of it. I was like, I'm the one that left them out there with a father. I left my wife out there without a husband. I left my mom without a son. I left my friends without their friend because I was kind of the provider for a lot of people and always took care of everybody. And
was that your wake up call? Just hearing that phone call?
Yeah. I never really had a chance to go back to sleep because it was every day I was getting a call like that, And then meanwhile, Jelly's out in a van, sleeping in a van, touring. And every time I call him, having that little bit of hope of him going, man, this shit's really happening. Like, we're out here. I'm in Tupelo tonight. I'm in, Kansas City tonight, or I'm here. So like hearing that and knowing, okay, this is possible. I can't control what's going on out there. The only thing I can control is what I do with this situation and who I become and who I come out. And so I just started stripping away all those layers and figuring out, what are the thinking patterns that keep bringing me back in here? Why do I keep going back to the same thing? Why do I keep making the same mistakes and decisions? And I had to process a lot, and figure it out. And so I came out a completely different person. I had lost 120 pounds. I had rid myself of a lot of irrational thinking and beliefs and things that I was instilled, through music and environment. And
was that hard to rewrite, especially as you're sitting in a prison where you're surrounded by people who have similar minds in a way? Was that hard to rewrite that entire story for you to come out a completely different person?
1,000%. But the thing about it is, 99% of people have it in them and they want to change and they know better. It's just change is scary. Mm-hmm. And I was beyond the point of fear, right? My fear had diverted from change to the end result of what was going to happen to my children. I just saw something the other day. It was like change happens when the reality of the outcome becomes scarier than the fear of change. Something like that.
And that was cool. Essentially what was happening to you in these moments. How long, like when you were getting those phone calls, how much longer did you have to serve before you were able to get out?
Oh, it started, as soon as I got in there, it started happening. As soon as I was away, call home, and the first call is, oh, this happened, I'm so sorry. And then it's like, you can just see it getting worse and worse and worse. And as soon as I hit prison, I walked in and I saw the different types of people, right? And you have the group that's still gambling, smoking, doing drugs, eating honey buns, sitting in there watching TV all day. And then you got the guys that are getting up, going to classes all day, going to the yard to train, staying in shape. And they kind of stay in packs. And I was like, that's what I want.
And you went to the pack that was going to the classes and working out. And
I took I would take the classes so many times that I would be the teacher.
Like what are the classes? Like, what are these classes you
like
take?
Parenting and finances, critical thinking. I did all the drug programs, anti-violence programs, just trying to learn how to reel your anger in and catch it before it gets anywhere. And I just rational self-analysis type stuff.
But that was all a choice. You weren't required to go to any of that.
Not at all. The drug program, you get time off if you take it. So, of course, there's an incentive to that, but I knew I needed it. And I did it in the state, made parole in the state, but then I had to go serve my Fed time. So then when I went to the feds and I went to do the program again, because it would take a year off your sentence, and you'd get 6 months guaranteed halfway house. So you're literally getting out 18 months earlier if you do the drug program. And I had 5 years, 57 months in the feds and a 13-year sentence in the state. Wow. So, but then the second time I went through that drug program, I already knew all of it because I had taken the same program in the state. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't having to learn anything. I was getting to digest it. So the second time I went through the drug program, it like a light bulb, struck. And I was like, okay, I got this.
Yeah, that first time it was, okay, this is all information for the first time.
And I have to learn it, write it down, take a test, right? Yeah. Once I've already learned it and I know I can pass the test, I'm really learning it. It's really soaking in, at that point, I'm really understanding it.
So struggle now, obviously, this is 9 years ago. Yeah. But you now, like, do you look at your life and you see your kids thriving and you see you doing music and doing the things that you would talk to Jelly when you were in jail and he was doing? Do you look at your life now and you're like, dang, I did this?
Yeah, but I still look at it like, man, I need to do better. Every day I fall short of something. I could jump to conclusions and be like, I should have sat on that a little longer. Or I could shift the blame and be like, man, I can't do that. I really got to take accountability for that. In relationships and business, I still make a lot of mistakes, but I'm having to like really sit back and just learn how to remind myself, of who I was when I came home. Because it's so easy. It's so easy to come out of prison and be like, oh, I got this. Watch this and be this, great person. And then life really starts happening. Life starts lifing. And, you'll fall back into old ways or you'll start to slip. And it's just about readjusting yourself every day, and really prayer helps me a lot, especially with anger, because I'll assess the day. Somebody might have said something to hurt my feelings. I might have done something to hurt somebody else's feelings. And I just got to be like, look, I can't let the sun set on my anger. I pray about it, give it to God, and wake up and start fresh the next day. And that's really, with that and, things like staying in a good routine with the gym, a lot of community work, a lot of going into jails and rehabs and speaking. And we're opening rehabs across the country right now called Sound Sobriety, where we're implementing songwriting in. It's me and Brantley Gilbert and a business partner named Michael Fry and his wife. And we're implementing songwriting into their therapy, teaching them how to put their feelings and their emotions and their testimonies in a song form.
Well, can I ask you this too? Because I imagine growing up in the ways that you did, you were not taught to share your feelings and emotions. You were probably taught that's not what you do. And
yeah, so the men in my life, of course, were like that. You don't cry, you don't tell anybody how you feel, or you hold it in. You be a man, you suck it up. But I was raised by a single mama that cried every day. So,
where she really went against that.
Yeah, and I'm a mama's boy. Like the wrong commercial come on, I'm bawling like a baby. And then even as a father, now I see why the men told me that, because there's a lot of time as a man, and especially as a father or a husband or a friend, you want to shield them from knowing how bad it is sometimes, like, so you kind of got to hold it in and deal with it sometimes, because if everybody's looking at you as the breadwinner, the protector, the provider, the security, you can't let them know that everything's in shambles and you're trying to figure it out.
Do you feel like that healing has started to reverse for you now? Like where you got out and you were doing all this stuff to bounce back your life. Are you now at the point where you're able to look back on all of it and start to kind of heal your inner self of stuff that was happening?
Yeah, for sure. And, like when the mother of my kids died, I wasn't able to grieve for a year, right? Because my kids were grieving really heavy. And then right behind it, we lost the father to my 2 stepkids. He died of the same way. So between those 2 and then other friends and stuff, sometimes I've had to put my grieving on the back burner, and I've learned that that's not always healthy. Mm-hmm. Like you have to separate yourself, and you got to go find your own time to grieve, whether it's an hour car ride, punching the steering wheel and screaming at God, whatever it is, praying and crying and, whatever that may be. And because I'm dealing with it right now, I'm wearing these 2 necklaces today because one of my best friends, Nemo, is actually fighting for his life right now. And I just had these made for us and was going to gift them to him. He was supposed to come down this week and stay at my house. And I didn't get a chance to give them to him, but he's fighting right now. And I had one of my best friends and workout partners pass this morning. So, I've had to take, like, I was just on vacation when I got the news about Nemo. And he wasn't an artist or a singer, but he was an incredible singer and a songwriter. But he's just a biker, and we had got him to record a song that he had wrote. And so I literally had to, we're on family vacation. I had to break away and go, hey, y'all, I just need a little while. And literally went in there and turned that song on repeat and cried like an animal for 2 hours in the shower, and then came out, was like, all right, let's go. You got to find that time to grieve. And I'm learning that, life is, you're always a student, and I'm always learning things,
What do you feel like are some of your hardest lessons? Because I was going to ask you about grief, because I do feel like, unfortunately, you are no stranger to grief, which sharing that of you getting in the shower and crying, I think is a good lesson for a lot of people, because grieving tends to be one of those processes. We just push back and do what needs to be done to get through something. Yeah,
you try to be too tough, you'll find out how weak you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Try to hold that in, and then it's gonna spill over, and you're either gonna lash out, or you're gonna break, or and you gotta allow yourself to feel. You gotta allow yourself to release. You gotta allow yourself to feel those emotions. The older I get, the more I realize, real men cry. And we have emotions, we got feelings, we gotta let it out. Yes, we gotta do it in our own time a lot of times, because when you do have, the women and children of your house and your friends and, everybody looking at you for that strength, you gotta be strong for them. But also, when I was going through that, all my daughters came up to me and would put their arm around me, when I came back. They knew that I was dealing with it, but I still just put the smile on, and we finished family vacation.
How are you? I can only imagine how great of a girl dad you are. But
oh, they're my babies.
I need to know girl dad struggle.
Yeah,
because I'm hearing a tough struggle, right?
Yeah.
I need girl dad struggle.
I've got 4 daughters, and I love my sons. Don't take it wrong. They're my little mini me. I'm a little tougher on my boys, because I want them to be good men. I want them to love and cherish the women in their life. That was one of the last things my dad told me. It's your job on this earth as a man to protect and provide for the women in your life. Never put your hands on a girl. So I'm super tough with my boys about their manners, chivalry, and
well,
respect.
You're raising the next generation of men.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I don't want to hear none of y'all complaining about the way this country is if you're not raising your kids to fix it. If you're not raising your kids to be the next generation and to do better than we did, then you're dropping the ball. Mm-hmm. But yeah, my girls, I have the best relationship with my daughters. We text and talk every day. I've got a 25-year-old named Brianna Harness.
Wow.
She's my firstborn. She's a blues singer. She's got an incredible voice. She's just dropped, I think, her 5th album.
Wow. And she's 25?
Yeah. But
She's done more than I have, and I'm 31. Yeah. Hot damn. Okay.
Yeah. She works 10 hours a day on a farm.
Wow.
I think 4 days a week, and then cleans houses the other days. She's like really independent as far as like, she only calls me when it's an emergency for money, which she knows I'd get her anything she needs and always be there. But she's really crushing it. And then my daughter, Innocence, she's dating a professional boxer named Austin Dulay, who I've known forever. He's a good friend. I'm great friends with his dad. And then I've got a daughter, Courtesy, who's 17, and she's a straight A student. I think her lowest grade was a 98. She had like 104s and stuff. It was insane. But she gets up every morning, goes to the gym, 5 a.m., does Bible study, goes to school, gets off school, goes to work, and sometimes goes back to the gym. She's got a great relationship with her boyfriend. He's like number 1 in the state in soccer. And just, you hear her talk, and she's got it figured out more than I do.
Okay, I need to know, like, having them meet the boyfriend situation for the first time, because when I first met you, I was like, oh dang, like he's gonna be mean, tough, whatever. And then you're just like this teddy bear who's pulling snacks out of his backpack. Yeah. So polar opposite. But when they first meet you, was it like, oh crap?
Oh yeah. And I've already got a reputation, from the previous life before, and then being a rapper, and then, a country singer, and, I've got a checkered past and live in a really nice neighborhood. So I'm already like that dad, and I'm the type that's like, no, he's not picking you up. He's going to knock on the door.
Yeah, but you're making sure your girls are treated with princess treatment, as they should be.
Yeah, and they know whatever you do to her, I'll do to you. I've had a couple that, I kind of had to tighten down on. But for the most part, I raised my daughters to not settle. And by giving them an example of, I'm not perfect. I definitely want my daughters to find somebody way better than I am. But they see the way that I am in my relationship, and they see how I am as a man. And so there's a bar that they can't go under.
So that you're telling me that they don't have the bar in hell that some of us had
over
in our 20s? Got you.
Yeah. Which I'm
proud of that for them.
Yeah. And then I got a daughter, my stepdaughter, Patience. She's like our wild one. She's incredible.
Is she the youngest of all of them?
She's not the youngest kid, because we have 2 boys that are younger than her. But she's the youngest of the daughters. And she's just herself, like she chops her own hair off. She wants to be a hairdresser. So she's constantly you never know, when she walks out of that room, you never know what color her hair is going to be the next day. But it's always fashionable, and she looks good. She pulls it off. She gets in a little bit more trouble at school, but it's because she doesn't take any shit. Like she's like real, I don't want to say stubborn, but it's something else. All my kids have been through so much. Like she just lost her father, her biological father, to an overdose, and my kids lost their mother, and then my 2 oldest kids, my son, Little Will, and my daughter Brianna, their mom, she went through it. She was, a dancer, and was on drugs and went to federal prison, but now she's 3 years clean and sober, doing good, getting her life back in order. But, my kids still went through a lot with what I put them through, what their mothers put them through, And so there's like a sense of resilience and just strength. Like if you met Courtesy first, she pulls up in her little Lexus in the first couple minutes, you're like, oh, this girl comes from money. And then you start having a conversation. You're like, oh no, she's been through some shit. She just wears it really well, and she's learned from it. So I got 2 beautiful young boys, 14 and 13, and one's into boxing, one's into football, and they're both doing good in school. And
so you're telling me, outside of all the touring and all the stuff that you're doing, you're full on dad over here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you really could be PTA dad if you wanted to.
Oh man, I would love to. I would love to go in there and tell them how to get it right.
do all these things. Like, this is what I suggest, bringing the fruit snacks. I could totally see you bringing fruit snacks.
I love fruit snacks.
You do.
Yeah.
With you also brought the bubble gum. What was the big league chew?
Yeah, you can't go on a baseball field without big league chew.
I like PTA dad trauma. I feel like this needs to be a thing.
Yeah, for sure.
You have so much of that musical touches in your life. You mentioned it, and your daughter's pursuing it. What was that like for you? You know, you take away all the other things that you were experiencing in life, but you were the grandson of Waylon Jennings, Jesse Coulter. Your uncle is Shooter Jennings. Yeah. You mentioned in just multiple different assets how you just have all these different connections to different things.
No pressure.
Yeah, like what's that like?
Well, I think that's why I became a rapper, because I wasn't going to try. My mom is an incredible writer and singer, and I grew up in a house with a piano, you know, and like whatever I was going through. I mean, when I was little, my earliest memories was her waking me up, going, "Come on, we got to get ready for school. Come in the living room," and I'd come in the living room. She'd be, "This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord," you know, and she'd be playing hymnals and getting me up, and I'd be dancing, and, you know, so like music was always, but I had boots that I could never fill, right? Like I could never be Waylon Jennings, but I can do the shit out of Struggle Jennings, you know? And that was something Waylon taught me early, is, you know, like, don't try to stand in my light. Don't stand in my shadow. Step outside and find your own light, you know, and be yourself. So always be yourself. Regardless what you're going through, stay true to what you're going through, to yourself and your music, because there's millions of people going through the same thing that you are and that feel the same way. And you may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you'll be somebody's cup of coffee. So
that's some great advice to get from Waylon, but also, as a listener and a fan of country music, we know Waylon for outlaw country. We know the music that he sang about. We know what he sung about. Was he like that tough exterior on you as a grandson, or was it just a different person?
Waylon was Waylon, and he definitely he was always Waylon. He was always tough, but he was so loving, and he was such an incredible, he was more like a dad to me, because when my dad got killed, I went and stayed with Waylon for a while. I didn't go back to school that year, you know. I took the last half of school off, and Waylon kind of told the school, well, he'll be back next year, you know. It was like, he'll be back and he'll be in the next grade, got it, you know.
You had somebody that was really having your back, not just like a normal having your back.
Oh, no. Because he was really that guy. Like, he was firm, he was tough, but he was so loving, and like, you know, he made me feel like I was the coolest thing on the planet. You know, I was the only grandson that lived in Nashville for a long time. Way moved to Nashville, and his brother moved to Nashville in their teens. So I like grew up in the house, and Shooter was like a little bit more sheltered because he was in the house so
all the time, different lives.
Yeah, so I was like the one that was coming from the outside in, like first cigarette, showing him his first porn magazine. Like, you know, I was the bad influence because I was out there in the real world. And but Shooter, you know, he left home at 18 to go have a rock band in LA and never left LA. And he had his own dark path and overcame all of it. Now he's crushing it. Grammy after Grammy between, you know, Brandy Carlisle and Tanya Tucker. And, you know, he's producing all the Charlie Crockett stuff now. And Jake Owen just went and did a record with him, and I got a record with him coming out next year. Wow. So he's crushing it. I mean, Shooter's probably the best human being on the face of the planet in my eyes, besides my beautiful little daughters.
And when you were a kid too, I was imagining that you don't really know any different. This is just your family. This is your life.
Yeah.
So at what point did you realize?
Yeah, when you get it in school, like when you're in school, you know, they'd be like, oh, you know, they would try to use it against you, you know.
Is that why you kind of turned away from it originally? I know you said that you didn't want to use the name.
Yeah, and because I always wanted to make my own. Like, I was friends with Yellow Wolf for probably a year and a half before I told him my grandpa was Waylon. And the night that I did, he was like, what? Dude, what? And we're like drinking downtown Nashville, riding, listening, and we were listening to a Waylon song. And I was like, yeah, you know, this is my grandfather. He's like, what? turn the radio down. He's like, what? And then he looked down. I've got this big like watch on, this big expensive watch because I'm a drug dealer. And he's like, you're wearing a watch like that? And I said, you're right. Whew, threw it out the window on Broadway. He still tells that story. Yeah. And, you know, and I'd always gravitated towards rap because that's the era that I grew up in. That's the environment that I grew up in. That's what spoke to me. But I loved country, and country was always the backdrop. You know, Waylon and George Strait. I know just about every word to every George Strait song, you know. And then being on tour, hearing the instruments and the steel guitar, like crying, and you know, I always loved it. That's why I was really like the first one to ever put steel guitar on a rap record in the early 2000s. I was the first one that started blending the two genres. Besides, of course, you know, Bubba Sparks had a lot of country flavor in there. Mm-hmm. Timberland was, you know, in the beats and stuff, and Bubba's accent, and the Tim McGraw and Nelly thing, yeah. You know. But I was already mixing rap records in my bedroom, you know, with country at that point when that came out. So, and then, you know, a lot of people were like, oh, you can't mix country and rap. You're going to ruin your career. And then I went to prison and came home after I dropped outlaw shit, went to prison, came home, and it was like a whole new genre, you know.
Was that weird too? You drop an album. You're like, oh, well, I can't wait to promote it. I can't wait to sing about it. You go to jail.
Yeah,
instead.
Well, I dropped the song and then went to jail. Actually, the day I dropped the video, I went to jail the same day. And then I was gone 5 years. About a year and a half into my sentence, we dropped the whole album.
So were you making phone calls from jail and dropping the album?
Yeah, so I had one of my best friends in the world, and he still works with me, does all my content, shoots most of my videos, and he's like my right-hand man, Sebastian. He actually had signed me to like a label deal, and then his father had passed away, and he kind of, you know, I quit hustling and all this, and then he like disappeared because he was having to deal with his grief and get his family right, you know, and make sure his mom didn't lose her house, and so he kind of stepped away. And then when he called me back, he's like, "Man, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I just got indicted. I'm looking at a bunch of time." And he was like, "Dude, I'm coming down there," and we recorded I Am Struggle, which was all Waylon samples, and then me rapping to it. And that was the album that Outlaw Shit was on. But we recorded it right before. It was like a rat race to get an album done before I went to prison, because I didn't really know how much time I was looking at, you know.
Holy crap. I didn't know that about that record.
Yeah, and it actually released while I was sitting in a prison.
Well, and you had fans over this course of your career. Yeah. So was that also weird because you're like there and you're not really getting to do or have any interaction with what's happening with your music? Yeah,
but like the guards would come in and be like, "Man, we're listening to your song out in the parking lot," you know. And then people would come in and, you know, be like, "Oh, man." And then especially being gone 5 years. So by the time I'm in there 3 or 4 years, the song's gotten big. So new people coming in are like, "Oh, shit," you know. So it was cool. I was getting to feel it, and I was getting a lot of fan mail in there, you know, which gave me a lot of inspiration and hope, and I perfected handwriting.
Were you songwriting ever when you were there?
So when I went in there, I started scribbling a bunch of lyrics and stuff, and then I was like, you know what? I started to notice that everything I was writing was from a perspective being in there, and I was like, as I was changing, the narrative was changing. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to try to do this. I'm going to sit in here the next 3 years, because I was like writing the first two. I was like, I'm just going to absorb. And then when I get out, I'm going to tell the story. So as soon as I got out, Yellow Wolf put me in the studio, and I wasn't supposed to be recording because I was in a federal halfway house. So I had to have a real job. So Yellow Wolf put me on payroll as the merchandise marketing director. And I had a little fake desk set up with a laptop that didn't even work in the corner of the studio in case the parole would come and have to check out my little area. And I was in there writing songs and recording.
A little workaround, but you were working. It's just not probably an official version of what work looks like.
Yeah, well, and then so they were going to violate me and send me back because I was putting up these documentary episodes. And they were like, this isn't a real job. So they were about to send me back. They came and told me, they said, hey, you're going back to prison. This lady came in. She was on fire. She was like, I'm sending you back to prison. And I think, oh, this is BS, da-da-da-da-da. You need to get a real job. This isn't a real job. And then they tell me I'm going. So I packed all my stuff, thought the march, said goodbye to my kids, you know, after being gone all this time. And they were in foster care at the time. I had to say goodbye to them again. Woke up the next morning and they were like, hey, we need you to come downstairs. I thought marshals were there to pick me up and go in there. And that lady was like, you know, somebody called and you know, I guess you got somebody on your side, but you know, we're putting an ankle monitor on you, da-da-da-da-da, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not going back. And then she leaves. And the director of the halfway house calls me in there and he puts me on speakerphone and it's the lady that's over all the programs. And she's like, dude, I love your documentary. She's like, I'm going to start using it because greatness is in the gray area and we've been black and white for so long. She was like, I'm going to allot you 8 hours a week of studio time, but you got to keep your job and you got to bring your pay stubs in and pay your fees. We got an ankle monitor on. She was like, that's the only way that I could really justify not sending you back. And she helped out a lot. And
wow.
So I ended up not going back.
It just took that one person.
That one person to just believe and go, okay, this guy really has the opportunity to make a change. And yeah.
Wow. That's a really cool story. I'm glad that was not where I anticipated it going, but that was really cool. Yeah. And also awesome just that there was that one person out there who said, you know, I'm going to do things a little differently.
Yep.
Because it always takes one person to make a change.
I know.
Sometimes you do everything monotonous and stay in the black and white, as she said, because that's what you mentioned way before any of this was that change is hard.
Yeah. Making
that change is hard, and she just chose, and it's really cool that made a point in your story. So all of your music, I know we've talked about all the personal stuff, and I think I could sit here and talk to you all day about all of the things in your life, but 2 things. Your music. How many albums do you have?
Probably got like, I'd say 13 or 14 out there, but I have 85 now unreleased songs.
Crazy.
So I'm about to release, first single drops Friday for me and Brian Martin did an EP called 1976. He had just got kicked off the Morgan Wallen tour and he came over, we were meeting for the first time, going to write a song and ended up with a bottle of whiskey and telling me everything that was going on in his life. And I said, man, let's do an album together. He was like getting blacklisted and stuff at the time. And I'm like, I like you. And so we sat in there 5 days, wrote 5 songs, brought all the band in one room, let them rock. We laid the vocals, all super old school, got just a real authentic feel. And it's called 1976. The album is an EP, and it comes out October 3rd.
Wow. And that's the latest.
September 26th.
Okay. That's the latest album of all of these.
Yeah, that
EP.
Yeah, that one's coming out. And then right behind it in November, I have my album Last Name, produced by Ned Cameron, who's incredible. He produced Only God Knows with me and Jelly, and a couple songs off my last album. I've got a full album that's coming in November, produced by him. Then I've got 2 more rap albums that we're finishing up now. And then I've got the album produced by Shooter. It's done. I got to go relay a few vocals because I got with a vocal coach. I was like, I'm going to take this serious. Being a rapper so long and my heart being in country music and wanting to switch completely over to country was originally my idea. I just jumped in with a vocal coach to just really learn, and to perfect it and find my voice and be able to use it.
How do you have time to sleep and be a dad when you have 4 actual albums that are happening all in the span of the next 6 months?
Even more than that, because I got another one that we're recording in August. It's all old school. I wrote a bunch of songs with like Bob DiPiero and a bunch of old school writers that it came out and it was so different than the other stuff that I had that I was like, oh, we got to put this on a project. So me and a good friend of mine, Zach Gardner, he co-produces a lot of things with me, and He's incredible. So we're doing that in August. And I wasn't, I was kind of chasing for a little while the country radio thing. I was like, man, because we would all, growing up as a kid, listening to the radio, you want to hear your stuff on the radio. But there's a lot of steps involved to that, and I was really getting the whole, well, you got to completely commit to country and you can't put out any more rap. And then Brantley Gilbert was like, Bubba, you can't forget to dance with the girl that brought you to the party. And I can't not rap. Like that's
part of who you are.
Yeah, it's part of who I am. So I was just like, you know what? As much as I would love country radio, maybe, one day I'll get to hear my songs on the radio, but I'm not going to chase that. I'm going to just keep doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to stay independent and I'm going to keep pumping these albums out. The hard part about being independent is a lot of times you don't get the push and you don't get the promotion and the marketing that you would get if you were on a major label. But so like, you see songs that could be number one on country and they get looked over, but they become other people's favorite songs. And, 50 times a day I get comments like, why is this not number one in the country? But I like to still be able to go into Kroger and shop. My community loves me. I love to be able to, pull up at the kids' football games. And
and there's a lot of beauty and independent that you get to put out what you want to put out and do the projects you want to do. And it's admirable to do it. It's definitely you have so much more drive to do it too.
Yeah.
So I think it looks differently. We talk about this a lot, that fame is so shifted and you can have a successful career any which way as long as you go for it.
Yeah,
really.
For sure.
There's not one path.
I want to do it till I'm 90. I want to be, I don't care if it's just, I was blessed to get to go do amphitheaters with Jelly Roll and watch that. Now he's in stadiums with Post and watching all that. I'm so proud of him. But there's moments where I'm like, man, I see the way he has to live, right? With just, hey.
No.
I see the way that, how busy he is and how much he does. And there's moments where I'm like, man, I would be blessed to be in that position, but I kind of like being independent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I do love to end these things on, a piece of advice, and I want everybody to go check out all of Struggle's music. I think you could listen to it for a whole entire year before you probably made it through everything.
And I'm going to drop a whole new catalog at that time.
So get through all of that. But I like to end the podcast on whether it's a piece of advice or motivation or inspiration, something that maybe we haven't touched on. However, the floor goes to you, but that's what I like to end on.
Well, and I've been blessed recently. I just got made the director of Send Musicians to Prison. Nathan Lee's been running it for 16 years, and they took me into Rikers Island, and it was so special. I was like, man, I want to do this more and be a part of it. And Nathan Lee had just been to where he was kind of stepping down from it and just staying on the board. And they were like, well, we're looking for a new director. And so they all voted, and I became the new director. And so I'm getting to go back into prisons. And one of the things that I find the most that I really is just on my heart to tell people is like, don't let your past define you. Like, there were so many times in life where people would ask me, like, are you ready? And I was like, yeah, I was born ready. But I wasn't born ready. I had to go through all the shit that I went through to get ready. And I like to use the analogy, when they purify gold, they put it in a fire, they pull it out, wipe off all the imperfections, and they put it back in the fire. Don't be afraid of those flames. Anything you're going through, anything you've been through, it's all leading you up to where you're supposed to be. You just have to keep that mindset. You have to keep moving forward, make the best decisions you can, and you will get beyond where you can dream you would be in any aspect, whether it's success, business, relationships, love. Just keep moving and just lead with your heart and don't give up.
Oh, that's a really good piece. And congratulations on becoming the director. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's going to be a great way for you to get back in the community. It's cool that you're changing what would have been really beneficial and helpful for you. You're making sure that that's happening for other people. And I think that's really awesome.
Well, I think it's better to focus on building something bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's part of the reason why we're here, right?
Yeah.
So, Struggle, thanks for being here. Thanks for being so
Thank you.
open and sharing your story.
Thank you.